Hello everyone, welcome back. Sorry about my tardiness. This has been a absolutely chaotic day. This Sunday was daylight savings time and I don't think I have fully recovered. It's been several days. A friend of mine posted online a joke that people with kids at daylight savings time, they don't just lose an hour, they lose an hour for every day for 5 to 14 days afterwards, which I think is pretty much spot on the mark. So it's been crazy. It's been absolutely crazy. And then on top of all of that, there's been car brake issues, and then my wife has a pulled tendon in her thumb, and everything's been hard this week. So tonight I'm actually going to start with the brain teaser rather than it being at the end, mixing things up. Gonna play around, see how it goes. Okay, so for the brain teaser, let's jump over here. This one, unfortunately, comes courtesy right of one of my repositories. So for anybody who wants to play along at home, here's the issue. I have a GitHub action with this job here, and it has a build job, and the job does a few things. It checks out the repo, sets up .NET version 7x, does a .NET build, does a .NET test, does a .NET publish, and uploads the artifacts. And this bug has been sitting here for a while because unfortunately, I never caught that it wasn't working properly. So if we look at the latest run on the pipeline, we can see it did in fact do all of those steps. It ran a .NET build, it ran a .NET test, and then it did do a publish, and we can see all of that going, and it uploaded artifacts, and we can actually go and look at the artifacts on here, and the site actually publishes out and goes live on Azure, and everything's fine. What is not fine is there are no tests being executed. You'll note here, anybody who has done much test running with .NET test, usually there's output here. You see, some number of tests passed, some number of tests failed. There's none of that. There's no tests. So the question is, why is there no tests? Because this sort of setup I think I've done many times, and it's a subtle bug. It's one of those, I came across this at the hackathon I did a couple weeks ago because I re-implemented this same bug. Oh, Mini4G, thanks for the sub. I implemented this at the hackathon that I was at, and my team and I were going along, and a few hours in I went, hey, how did we, because one of our guys is really good at writing tests, and we accidentally published out a version of the software that had a bug that the tests should have caught. Like the tests were straight up failing. And I'm like, wait. How did this get past the pipeline? My workflow action should have caught this. There shouldn't have been a bug. Yeah, Benjamin, you know where this is going. No spoilers. He was there. He got to watch the revelation. And I popped open this GitHub action, and I was looking at it, and here, I'll put these side by side make sure my big head isn't blocking anything. And I stared at this for a minute and went, hang on, what's going on? So the first hint that I'll give is actually buried underneath the publish. And maybe I'll make this guy a little bigger. So here's the hint. When the .NET the .NET build is run, the .NET test is run. And there's arguably a bit of a bug here in the .NET publish, is oftentimes when you're doing a .NET publish, you'll tack on this -- no build because you want to publish out the same version of the artifacts that you just tested against, right? Makes sense. The problem being, and you'll note here, this thing says it's doing a restore. And then it goes through and publishes all of the stuff out, and there's some assembly optimization, and that was my first hint, and I'm like, hang on, why is it doing a restore? The NuGet packages should have been restored when the build happened. And so I came up to the build log and I went, why do I not see some of this same like MS build type output in my build? And the reason there's no tests is because the build didn't run. But I was like, but there's a build command here, and I see this, a build configuration release -- version 1.0.182. And after staring at this for longer than I'll admit, I realized, crap. So let me close this down because I think that's actually on a different thing. So let me bring this up. So you'll know I'm not even in a repository here. If I do .NET build -- version, you'll note that just straight works. And it doesn't matter if I do -- version foo. -- version, when you tack it onto .NET, is actually a option that's designed to give you the version of the .NET. Or the, yeah. Version gets piped through and you end up getting a version number. Real similar. So it's not actually doing the build because I'm using -- version on the end of it, and that's short-circuiting the build and causing it to actually not compile. Builds really fast, 0 seconds. Like, show me another project that builds in 0 seconds. That's hard to do, especially on free tier level build agents. And then a test only took 1 second. And these times are probably just due to rounding errors because I'm guessing they were very fast. But once again, same problem is we don't have this. So then the follow-up question is, well, how do we fix it? Right? Like it's great that there's the bug, but how do we go through and actually fix this? So conveniently, there is and I'm going to save on doing this right now. So that this unfortunately, this is just straight up in one of my repos right now. I didn't have to go looking. This just points to the speeds of .NET 7. Yes, .NET 7 is able to print the version so quickly. If we go to the, what did we call? I'm blanking on the name. Benjamin, what was the name of our project for the hackathon? I can go here. Gilder, there it is. Ha, found it. See, just needed to think for a second. So if we go in here, thank you. If we go in here, here is the appropriate fix. So rather than actually go, or I should say, this is one of the fixes, right? So there are several options that you can pass into your project. There's things like version suffix, etc., that have slightly different behavior depending on what you want. But the idea here is rather than using -- version, what you really want to use is, I don't have my pretty little drawing. What you really want to use is this -p. So -p, what this ends up doing is sending a parameter all the way through to MS build. So this is the equivalent of, or roughly the equivalent of specifying the version attribute inside of your CS project. So this will actually pass it through, because the whole point of setting this version was because I wanted to version the software. That was it. Right? So this gets passed through to the build. That way an appropriate version gets set. And then you can do your release -- no build, and away we go. So much better solution to do this. Don't use -- version. That's bad. Okay, next thing worth announcing. The registration for Microsoft Build is now open, occurring May 23rd and 24th. For those people who actually wish to travel to Seattle, there is a in-person option this year. Hang on one second. Let's see how far it'll let me get. I don't know if it'll let me show the full login page or not. Oh, it already shows me registered. Dang it. I was hoping I could show the registration process, but I'm already signed in. I'd have to do it on incognito window or something. Whatever. So, if you are interested, yeah, global digital event or Seattle in person. So, if you are interested, I usually joke and call this Geek Christmas every year. Because as a .NET person, this is usually when I get to learn of all of the cool, awesome stuff coming in .NET for the rest of the year, which is really awesome. Typically, I will go through and even do a stream or two covering some of the announcements, or at least the announcements that interest me, because there's a lot that happens at Build, like a lot. I think usually I will queue up. Often there's recordings of the sessions, and I'll queue up the ones that I want to watch, and it usually takes me 2 or 3 weeks to get through all of the sessions. Like, there's a lot there. A lot. So if you are at all interested in cloud, Microsoft anything, AI, Azure, whatever, right? There is stuff for you here. So free for the digital event. Join, registered. Occasionally there's even like swag or signups and different things that different vendors and whatnot will do. So costs you nothing to sign up, and it might be worth it. And it is usually, I should say usually, it's one of my favorite events every year. So go check it out. Definitely recommend it. Okay, now on to the other stuff. Okay, so there are a few open pull requests I wanted to get reviewed and merged. And then I've got an issue to look at, and then I wanted to go back to doing the 5.0 stuff. I think that's where we're going. Yeah. Oh, Benjamin, I don't know if you noticed, you got promoted to moderator. I didn't ask, I just did it. So there was that. Okay, so let's do the unregistered hook ones first. So this one came in. This guy here, Chris, had opened an issue pointing out a memory leak in here and then opening a PR for it, which is awesome. I love this. Sorry. There's a car alarm going off for a car that I don't recognize. That's exciting. Okay. So, potential memory leak, and I've briefly looked at this before, but I actually want to check it out and take a closer look because memory leaks like this are nefarious, and I want to be a little more detailed on it. So, let's see. Awaiting my review. This one. Add remote and checkout. Oh, that is one of my favorite get cracking buttons, by the way. Right click on PR and just auto give me the thing. Okay, so boom. Okay, so we've got this. Okay, so key things here. Scroll viewer assist. And this is one of those things where you can't really, it's hard to unit test a memory leak. Like you could do like a benchmark.net test to make sure things are cleaned up, but this gets a little more difficult when you start talking about frameworks like WPF at play, because outside of standing up something with like XAML test, it gets very difficult. Side note, on the note of XAML test, the keyboard stuff that I was fighting last week, struggled to find it, couldn't find it. Then the problem miraculously disappeared. Yeah, that doesn't leave me with a lot of warm fuzzies. I hate bugs that miraculously just disappear without any sort of feedback or knowledge of them. So I'm not actually confident that the bug is gone, just that it's disappeared. So it may rear its head again. We'll see what happens. Okay. So let's take a little look here. So there's a couple cool things that were added in here. So all of this is around this scroll viewer support horizontal scroll, because that is the let me just close some stuff. I got too much crap open. This horizontal scroll source. And then I want to look at this a little closely. Support horizontal scroll. Because the idea is that it's able to register up for the events. So, and this is probably easier. So the code previously waited for the scroll viewer to be loaded. That's what this onloaded callback was doing. And then checks to see if we should support horizontal scroll. And then if so, registers the hook, right? Otherwise, removes the hook. This probably should have been called unregister hook, but whatever. Not a big deal. And then does the needful. The issue is when you register for events, and I think I've talked about this before, plus equals is kind of scary. It's really, really easy to leak memory because it's not really clear what's happening. So when you have a plus equals like this in C#, what this ends up doing is creating a new delegate. So loaded is an event. And events in C# are, you can think of almost like a list of delegates. And when this delegate is created, calls new, there's two things that a delegate is made up of: a method info and a source instance where the method info exists, right? And if in the case of a static method, that source instance will be null. The leak typically occurs with instance methods where people don't realize that it's implicitly capturing this value, right? So this guy is, how do I say this without using the word this? It's one of those really bad words. When this is being created, when the delegate is being created, it is capturing both the method info for this onloaded, as well as the instance on which this exists. Wow, that's a tongue twister. Okay, so the key fixes in here is with this weak event manager, which this is one of those classes that I always forget exists in WPF until I need it, and it's amazing and wonderful. So doing weak reference events is kind of a pain in the neck. It's difficult, it's hard. But conveniently, there's nice built-in support for it, where you can do this add handler. And the key difference here is this thing doesn't hold a strong reference to the object under which it would raise. Meaning, if the event would be the only thing holding it alive, well, then it gets garbage collected and goes away, which is awesome. Which is also why you end up with this kind of weird setup here, where you end up having to pass this kind of thing, which is great. But I wanna look a little closer at this. So this is, we come in here. If D is a scroll viewer, meaning the attached property has to be assigned to a scroll viewer or similar, which should happen. Comes in here. If it is loaded, do onloaded. Otherwise, adds handlers for both the loaded and the unloaded. I'm a little surprised we need both, but let's continue on and see what happens. Onloaded gets invoked, and all onloaded does, because it has to have this signature for this to work. And specifically, it has to have this signature because that's the signature for the loaded event. So if we just go and look at this real quick. So here's an event, routed event handler. Its signature is object routed event args, which is why this guy must be object routed event args. Perfect. Okay, so this guy here just captures the sender, makes sure it's a scroll viewer, calls do onloaded. This is where the real stuff happens. Okay, so in all of these cases, whether we come in from here or from here, we call do onloaded. We check if get supported horizontal scroll is true. If so, we register the hook. Otherwise, we unload the hook. On unloaded, we remove the hook. Okay. So this guy here, remove hook, takes the scroll viewer, calls get value. Okay. Interesting. So this does it gets the hook property, which is what, maybe we should look at register hook before we look at remove hook. Register hook. Okay, so cleans up. So this is a common pattern with eventing, is a minus equals does nothing if it wasn't previously registered. So it's very common when you see people unregistering before registering from an event. Really what they're doing is just making sure that they don't accidentally double register, because they can always blindly unregister themselves before registering, knowing that it'll either no up or remove the previous registration. Those are the only two outcomes. Okay, so it comes in here, removes it, gets the presentation source, verifies that it's a handle source, and then hook. Hang on, oh, I got you. Got it, got it, got it. Oh, wow, that's interesting. Okay, so this guy here is a delegate. And it is a delegate with a very funky signature. Handle source hook. Great. I think this is similar to what was there. We'll go and look at the changes in a minute. I didn't do the original changes, so this is also a learning opportunity for me. So it takes the local function, casts it into a delegate because the signatures match. Great. Sets the value for the source to be the handle source. Sets the hook to be the value of hook, and then calls source add hook. And I'm guessing the only reason it's caching both of these is so that it can do the remove later. That is my working theory. Okay. And then this guy just does on mouse tilt. Okay. And that all makes sense to me. Now let's look at remove hook. Okay. So remove hook pulls these guys out. Yeah, and so the whole point of caching the source is so that they can do source remove hook later, and then nulls out the original property. Technically, source could probably be nulled out as well at that point. It's not really going to make a difference either way. This is this value is a local. No, this one's the actual handle source. I don't know why that's. Let's look. Okay, so that explains why we're weak reference registering up for both of these. Because there's not a check on the e.newValue in here. It's just blindly registering for both and saying, you know what? In either case, we want to basically reevaluate our state. Because if those things aren't both set, we won't do the remove hook. Okay, so let's go back now and let's look at this one more time. Now that I understand the changes I'm looking, it's one of those, the diff view is hard to see all this stuff with. Can I do, let's look at this as unified. I go back and forth between which diff view is better, depending on what I'm looking at. Yeah, because the previous one was doing an if new value and doing the if else. Now it's just checking for loaded. Okay, so we come in here. That all makes sense. That was the extra capture, which was, I'm sure, contributing to the leak. Okay. I say ship it. Let it rip. So that goes there. Squash merge, squash merge. We're going to go. Okay, the fact that the AI is completing stuff is just mwah. Thank you, AI. So this magical button showed up earlier today, and I can't decide if I hate it or if I love it. It's basically a way into the Bing chat version of Chat GPT. That's basically what this is. It's a clever way to get into Chat GPT via Bing. Which is cool, but yeah, again, I'm torn on whether I love it or hate it. Okay, so that goes out, that goes out. Okay, so let's take a look at this one, and then I want to go look at this one. Do you have dependabot auto merges triggering builds on the main in this repo? Yes. Well, let me rephrase. I hope so. Otherwise, something's been auto merging on me, and I don't know why. I can confirm that real quick though. No. I've got. Yeah, so there is the Fastify GitHub Action Merge Dependabot set up on auto merge. You'll note that I have made this, the workflows in here, potentially as complicated as I possibly could. There's separate ones for PR verification. I've done separate things for the contributor bits. I've got version stuff. I've got things shared. Really the interesting ones in here are the release, the icon update, the PR verification, and the nightly release. Everything else is to support those. Yeah. And this I think I could make even better, but nah. It's one of those, right now it's working, and I have no reason to fix something that's working. Okay, so we're going to take this out. So let's start with the issue. Okay, pop-up box adding shadow. Except I want to add more shadow to emphasize the pop-up box. And so this is one of the things in WPF that's always that I go back and forth on. So, for example, my apps leverages attached properties a lot. And this is one of those things where attached properties are awesome, but it's not always obvious which control templates they actually work in. Because you can set an attached property on anything. Doesn't mean it's going to do jack. Some people will put behavior inside of the property changed on their attached properties so that it then it doesn't matter the template. It just applies and works, which is one option. Yeah, there's also a discoverability issue. It's like, yeah, I get confused. What does it show on your commit history on main if it triggers after auto merge? I don't think it's triggering. Not sure if you care though in this case. Just reminded me from the trigger the issue the other day. I was thinking about that, Benjamin. I was thinking about that. And the thing is, from 2 days ago, there's that guy. So, and this is, the thing is, I have a nightly, so I don't trigger on main on PR merges, so, which is probably the key difference. Because oftentimes the commits on this repo tend to be very bursty. Like, I won't touch it for a couple days, and then I'll merge a bunch of PRs. And I didn't really want to kick off a release every time I merged a PR. So instead, this nightly release kicks off, and it is actually what's responsible for pushing things out. So I kind of cheat a little bit by having a second action that triggers on a cron schedule and just runs. So searching on master is not likely to give you a lot of trust in it. Because, for example, this guy here will trigger just fine, but it's not actually going to do the whole... Yeah, it jumps around. So for those people who are interested, what Benjamin's referring to is we did run into a fun issue around the dependent bot auto merges. When it auto merges in, pipelines that are set to trigger on your main branch don't fire, and it's kind of annoying. So useful if anyone has a strong fix for it. Anyway, yeah, so there's a couple things that are coming here. So one, I suspect there's a way to actually work around some of this. I've got a few examples in my, so the two issues called out. Oh no, ungroup, don't do that to me. Let's see. Examples. Boom. Boom, 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 pop-up box. There is a couple fun ones that I've done in here where the idea is to go through and change out the pop-up box's template. Oh, that is not the file I was looking for. Is it here? Oh man, I may not know where it is. I might have to go hunting for it. There's ways to get around it, but they're kind of ugly. So the short version is this one is designed to clean that up. The other thing that kind of excites me is last stream I had talked about the idea of kind of wanting to put together a page like this where there's a properties list on the right and the control on the left so that you can see everything that needs to be set on it. And apparently Nikolai decided to go above and beyond and knock it out of the park. So Nikolai, you are awesome. Just going to say that. Okay, so when applying a drop shadow to a card containing the pop-up box, there needs to be reserved space for said drop shadow. It cannot draw outside its bounds. So adds a margin to bump the thing out. The other thing I would wonder is you can sometimes cheat this, Nikolai, with clip to bounds set to false so that things don't end up clipping. But that can cause other things to be an issue. In this case, I don't think margin bites you because you're basically in control of the whole window. Let's see. Pop-up box also supports custom offset. Let's see. This made the calculations a bit funky. I don't believe they were correct in all cases. It definitely did not support DPI scaling correctly. And didn't support flow direction. So I can 100% believe that there are cases in this library where we don't properly handle flow direction, and where we haven't taken DPI into account properly. Completely believe that. Like, some of these controls have existed since before those were things. Well, not flow direction, but DPI. Let's see. So this refactors pop-up horizontal scroll, vertical scroll, pop-up box, horizontal offset, dedicated for manual testing. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're just going to check this PR out and go powwow on this. Check out. Boom. Okay, so let's go fire this guy up, and let's just go play with it in the demo first of all. Because this kind of looks pretty slick. Come on, recompile. I will say, I also ran into an interesting issue today, and I don't know if it's related to my system, but I was running into problems with Snoop not working after the update on Tuesday. And I don't know if that's a me problem or if it's a generic problem. Okay, so we got a pop-up box. So first of all, let's actually, before we go here, let's go play with the buttons area, because I'm guessing Nikolai didn't touch these. Yeah, so we still have, so this is one of the reasons people get really confused about the pop-up box control. It's not fancy. It is a toggle button and a pop-up control. Because the idea of I click button, I see pop-up is a thing people want to do. So this kind of thing is somewhat common, and then being able to have things where you can do that kind of maneuver, great. Okay, so that all seems fine. Let's go look at the new pop-up control. Boom. Okay, so love this pop-up content in grid. It's a little dark, and I kind of wish it probably doesn't support it. Because we use, so on the other controls, we use show me the XAML, so that you have that little button you can click and see the XAML. I wonder if we could plug that in here. Maybe not even as a pop-up, but just like have a XAML control next to it. That'd be really slick. But I would want it to update as you change the properties, which is currently not possible with show me the XAML because it does all of its XAML calculations at compile time, not at runtime. We'd have to do some magic. Okay, so there's that. Now, if I change the elevation from 6 to 16, right? That's big. That's pretty good. Let's go 24. And the shadow is probably most obvious inside of light mode. And then if we dial it down to like nothing, we get no shadow on it. And a little shadow. And then we've got the other styles. So there's pop-up box, which is the standard. And you can change out the content for the toggle button as well as what not. Like this floating action one, the only thing interesting, pop-up content in grid. Huh. This one surprises me. I assume this thing must be aligning and going off to the side. Like, it's kind of hard to tell without this grid showing anything. I almost want to put this in a border just so I can see where it is, because elevation doesn't appear to affect it. The other thing I'm noticing is elevation. Elevation is being applied to both the toggle button and the pop-up. Was that true here? Interesting. That seems like a bug. The fact that with the material design pop-up box style, elevation is applied. Elevation is a drop shadow. Let's be clear. Here, the elevation is being applied to the pop-up. Here, it's being applied to the button. That's probably an artifact of the content accepting the elevation drop shadow. Do you remember that movie Rango? I do not. I don't know if I've seen it. Is it any good? Looks interesting. About a lizard. Huh. I'll add it to my list. Thank you. Thank you, December's truly, and I appreciate the follow. Yeah, so I think that is something Nicolad probably. So that surprises me. Let's do the radius. The other thing, okay, so I kind of want to look at this demo page because it's hard to evaluate that style. I like that we're exposing this guy, and then horizontal offset. Pop up horizontal offset. That didn't appear to do anything. This seems that there's something off here. There's something off. Bottom unaligned edges. Oh, this probably. I mean, I don't doubt this moves, but I kind of would anticipate a horizontal offset. Oh, that did move a bunch. Hang on. Oh, okay. Hold on. Maybe it's working and I'm just too stupid to realize it. Got it. Top and align left edges. Got it. Top and okay. So top and align right edges would shift it to the edge. There. Got it. 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 Okay. So it's that is actually working as designed. Okay. I'm just too stupid to be able to read. And the horizontal radius is really hard to see if you don't like left on the line top edges. Yeah. So this is the one where it's yeah. Okay. So that's fine. That's fine. Like that, like that. Pop-up content grid. Color. Oh, colored grid. Oh, hang on. Oh, hello. Hang on. So my wish for being okay. So turns out reading OP, and you should read all of the combo boxes. So my wish to have something that worked is right there. I still think there is an issue with this elevation and the difference in the behavior. It seems very odd to me that elevation would apply to the button in one style and the content in the other. Now, with that said, we probably would want both. I can see people wanting to set elevation for both the pop-up as well as the button. Now, the button, I think there's an easy workaround because you can just set the content and set the elevation directly there. Okay, enough of this. I think we're good. Let's go powwow on the PR and actually see what's here. Okay, so that's just adding the new page to the demo. For this to work. Therefore should not be needed here. So this guy here, let's look. That's a good question about why is it needed. Oftentimes you won't get beyond the defaults. Yeah, so defaults is there. This is actually one of the things in the FAQs that's a common problem, and oftentimes because people will complain that, you know, a particular style isn't set. Yeah, so pop-up box isn't actually included as part of the defaults. So to answer the question, Nikolai, that's the issue of why you had to add it, because the app.xaml just brings in the defaults dictionary. The defaults dictionary doesn't actually reference pop-up. So in order to get any of to explicitly reference any of the default styles, that's why. Because the app.xaml just references the defaults resource dictionary, which doesn't include the pop-ups. So that's, I don't think there's any negative side effects for adding it. Let's see. Totally different question. Why does VS suggest to convert from regular regex to generator regex? Why does it push for a partial class and not within the same class? It's a good question. Good question. Let me stand by. AM 423. You not? Fine. Fine, I'll do it the hard way. Should not be this hard to lowercase today. Boom. .NET new. I have to say, this has been my new favorite way of spinning repos. Absolutely love the templates. Mwah. I've been working on a couple more templates to add in as well, and I've been really tempted. I think I'm going to add a second WPF template to my templates repo, one that has a lot more stuff in it, because I keep finding this weird case between wanting a very simplistic repo with a minimal, and then one that has like all the things, right? Like I want to do localization. Trying to think, there was a couple, I started writing them down. There was a handful of other things that I found, or I wanted an example of how to do a tabbed layout. Like I'm thinking I might do a second one that's like WPF full or something that has a lot more stuff. That way, if you just want the basics, you do the basics, you're good. And then if you want the full one that comes with a lot more opinionated stuff that you might have to remove, but you want to see better examples, do that. Because that seemed... I found myself wanting both cases because I've been using this template a lot more, and I've been slowly making notes and changing things on it. Okay, so the question was, right? So I've got something like a regex. Once Visual Studio wakes up and decides that it's not hung anymore, come on, Visual Studio, you can do it. It's not that hard to move a cursor. I believe in you. Please don't crash. That would make me feel, oh, I'm not in New Visual Studio. I'm not in New Visual Studio. Okay, you're gonna die. Boom, die. Go away. Open with New Visual Studio. What's up, Robert? Yes, it is WPF because it is awesome. I know it isn't. No, it is WPF. It is WPF. Come on. Show me my solution. All of this because I wanted to show a regex. Now, did I need to spin a solution with 2 projects in unit test just to show a generated regex? No. But was it easy? Yes, and that's what's important. Okay. So my regex gets new. Oh, hush now. See, this is the other thing I've been wanting to add. Regex length. I think what you mean is totally awesome. You misspelled totally awesome. Or be awesome. So we've got something that's, BAM, find a decimal, exactly 3 repetitions. Something like that. Right? And we're gonna do that so that it does it. Right? And I believe here is where it gives you the prompt, convert to generated regex. So if you are targeting newer stuff and you have access to the source generated regex, this is a nice performance gain. Now, and maybe I'm biased, Benjamin, but this did go within the same class, but I'm wondering if it's because it was already partial. So let's try again. Public, we'll make it as complicated as possible. Sealed class my foo, because that's what we do here. You're cheating, Benjamin. Hang on, I gotta change tenants. Let's see. Oh, you're gonna hand me sample code. Even better. Even better. Oh, I see. So the question is, why does it... Oh, I see. Ah, got it. Okay, Robert, you asked for it. I'm using that regex. I have no idea what it matches. Let's see. So, regex... no. We're going to call it Robert because, darn it, Robert gave me a regex. Wow. Hang on. There we go. Boom. Okay, so I have no idea what this regex does. So, got it. Robert regex, because that's, and with Robert regex with 2 E's and 2 X's because I can't spell or type. So the reason why it pushes for a partial class is because that's how this source generator is ultimately going to work. So this is leveraging partial methods in C#. So prior to source generators, partial methods were kind of limited use. Like some things still leverage them, like T4's tooling did, because it was a way for a method to be declared in one part of a class, one of its partials, but be implemented elsewhere. But the rules around it were pretty strict, like that both the partial and its implementation both had to exist by the time you hit the compiler. With source generators, they relaxed some of those rules and said, well, we don't need to know about them right away. As long as they're there by the end, that's good enough, right? Give the source generators a chance to provide the implementation. which is what this thing is ultimately doing. So if we look at this guy, so one, my big head's in the way. Hang on. Ah, shoot, we'll just F12 it. One, I don't know about you, Robert. I have no idea what your regex does, but that's a very long explanation. And it doesn't actually look that bad. It did the indentation. It made pretty little bullet points for me. In my opinion, this feature of auto-generating the docs for your regex, that alone is worth converting your regexes for. Just that. If it did nothing else, just that is worth it. Because it fixes one of the biggest issues with regex, which is, how the heck do I read this thing? Like, yeah, ignore the fact that there's performance gains and all that other stuff that can happen. Yeah, that's optional. This is the good stuff. This is where it's at. But the reason it pushes for a partial class is, you'll note when I F12'd into it, I'm now in the source generator partial version of the method, where this thing has actually implemented it. So the reason it pushes for a partial class is because the source generator needs a place to actually implement this method, because what it's doing under the hood is it goes crazy. So you'll note, one, it does a partial of my class here, but then it also has this other type that it generates, this regular expressions generated Robert regex, and you'll know it starts doing this magical incantation thing. But if we look over here, the big benefit of this is regexes in ye olden days, like pre-November, they would have to go through and parse that string at runtime and convert it into the logic of the regex, right? Because it has to convert into what's called a finite state automata, right? Basically a really fancy state machine. That way it could figure out, does the text match? All of that stuff. Well, with the new regex stuff, what they do is they do that parsing at compile time with the source generator, which is awesome, right? Because most of the time, you're not building up these regex patterns dynamically. Like, that is one of the rules with this, is your regex pattern has to be known at compile time to do the evaluation at compile time. Okay, kind of makes sense. But most of the time, we know our regex things at compile time. And if we scroll down through this somewhat ugly looking thing, we can find our implementations of the state machine, of where it's actually walking through using slice, right? So this is going to be the span stuff in order to be able to find read-only span of char, in order to be able to find these positions. So it's doing that same state machine logic that the regex engine would have done at runtime, but now it's doing it at compile time, which then allows the compiler to go through and do whatever optimizations it's going to do to this. And so oftentimes, this regex will be faster. Not a lot. And with .NET, either .NET 5 or .NET 6, they did some work to cache repeated patterns. So you would only ever even take that hit once at startup. But now you don't have to take the hit at all. But so circling all the way back to your question, Benjamin, the whole reason why it pushes for partial is because in order for this attribute to work, this attribute is just a marker for a source generator, and the source generator has to put the code somewhere. And so in order to make the implementation of this method exist, it has to put it in a generated partial of your myfoo. So your myfoo will actually show up here. And if you want to see it rather than going through F12, what you can do is you can come up to your dependencies, analyzers, and then the system text regular expression generator, expand this out. Now, I can do this because this project is small. If you do this on like a production project of any size, this list is insane. Just fair warning. So you'll note here, I expanded, oh look, there's my file. You do this on a solution that has a few thousand files where you've leveraged source generators a ton. Yeah, it's a big. Now, it's obviously sorted and alphabetized, but it's a big. But you can also get into the generated versions this way, which is what you get when you F12 into it. So, for what it's worth. Yeah, partial methods are they were very limited in their application prior to source generators. Once source generators hit the scene, that's when things got lit. Because the compiler, I think it was the compiler, yeah, the compiler team relaxed some of the restrictions on partial methods to make source generators powerful, and then everybody started writing source generators, and it went awesome. Okay, so back to this. Okay, so let's see here. Let's see. This was a bit of a surprise to me. When pop-up box style is set to floating, it seems like something strange is going on with the content of the pop-up that shows. If the style override is left out, the text block will have a white foreground and thus seemingly invisible in the light theme of the demo app. Okay, so let's go take a look at this then. I think I need to see this in context. This is popupbox.xaml. Oh, this is the content template. So this is the grid. Width 100, text box 100. And this is explicitly, so this is in reference to this style here. That's setting the text element foreground to change it forward and back. And I think this is potentially the wrong brush even. Because I think it's usually, is paper the background or the foreground? That's one of the things we're going to fix. Let's go look at this. Tap. Okay, so this is up in the demo app under pop-up box. So I kind of want to try so let's just do this. I have a feeling I have a guess as to what's going on already. So the other template for the pop-up box where it does the action button, it's really designed around let's go here. Real design. Yeah. I think it exists in 3 as well as 2. We'll double check. Buttons. Floating action button. So this is that style for the pop-up box was largely built around this guy here, this floating action button. This was his intent of how he's expected to be used. And I can't remember if one of these has a better... And this, it's probably even more obvious here. Let's see. Floating action buttons, yeah. Because you'll note, this is even inside of material design, this is very, very much a special button. Oh, crap. Sorry, 1 second. Just got a build failure. This is the, please don't be the UI test. Proc dump. Pass. I'm worried this is going to be our password box tab control thing. To the bottom. 1 failed. Where's the failure? Failed, passed. Looking for big long stack trace. There's my stack trace. It is a XAML test. Password box test. Yeah, this looks like the one that goes. Yeah, I might have to look at this. These, yeah, respects keyboard tab navigation. Dang it. Yeah, the one that I said the bug mysteriously disappeared. Found it. Yeah, not thrilled about that. Anyway, so this is the idea. Oh, we don't actually support the extended one. Huh. That might be an interesting. I think you kind of get this with some of the other button styles, but whatever. This was the intent behind it, of this sort of interaction. So it's, and really the style should probably be renamed. That might actually be a good idea for 5.0, is fix the thing so that it actually follows the floating action button name to be real. Like this guy here, this is what he's intended for. Okay, so let's go here and let's intentionally go light theme. And then let's change you to colored grid. Yeah, and so he's ending up with the white for the foreground, which is getting set weird. Okay, so I'm gonna try Snoop and see if, no, see, Snoop's working just fine. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what was going on with my Snoop earlier. Okay. So let's go with here. Foreground. So we can see, so here's a good lesson in Snoop. So first of all, I've set my focused item to the text box here, right? So this is I grab that guy. And then we can see this guy is inherited. And so we can start walking up the food chain, and you can see text element foreground is an attached property that gets inherited down. You say, okay, inherited, keep walking up the food chain, walk up the food chain, walk up the food chain, walk up the food chain. Just gonna keep collapsing as I go. So left arrow, left arrow. Okay. So you'll note here, we've gotten all the way up to the pop-up box where the foreground is being intentionally changed. And if we go any deeper, we can see that this is then inherited. So it's the foreground on the pop-up box itself that's doing it. That's getting this primary hue foreground. If we look, I suspect the pop-up box. Let's see. I was looking multi-floating action pop-up. Let's see. I think that's near the bottom if I remember right. This guy here. So, primary hue mid foreground brush. Which primary hue mid foreground brush is getting white for this thing. Which means it's expected to have the higher contrast when shown against the background of mid. Now, this, so and this is probably one of these weird cases, is this the problem with the pop-up box control, again, is it's based around the idea of a toggle button and a pop-up. That's it. Toggle button, pop-up. But when you set the foreground property on a control, where do you expect that to be applied? Because we kind of have this weird separation between the toggle button and the pop-up. Should the foreground color be based around the toggle button, or should it be based around the pop-up? And in this case, this foreground is being intentionally set because the backdrop under which it expects to be applied is the primary hue mid brush. So it makes perfect sense. The background would be the mid brush and the foreground would be the foreground for the mid brush. That tracks. The problem is this foreground is being forwarded to both the toggle button as well as the pop-up. And in this demo case, without this style, this is ending up causing problems. I'm trying to decide what the right solution here is. Because part of me wants to say that it would be better for us to not abuse this style the way that we are. Because I think this guy, so let's look at where does this guy get applied? So this sets here. This guy here is probably being referenced. Element name, combo box, selected item. Yeah, so this guy's intentionally setting the content. And I'm wondering if the issue is that we really shouldn't be using this particular bit of content. Static combo to data template converter. Ooh, what does this converter do? That looks clever. Oh, that is clever. So it goes, so this is actually really slick. So this is using property pattern matching. So this says if the value is a combo box item and that combo box item has a tag property that is a data template, return the data template, otherwise return null. And there's a null bang here. And in reality, what I prefer to do on these is change these things up. So WPF does not have nullable reference type annotations enabled on them, which is really unfortunate. It's also very unlikely to receive them. And so the question becomes, what should you do? Because on the interface, none of these values, so the nullable reference types, like for example, this parameter could be in one of three states. It could be declared not nullable, it could be declared nullable, or it could be in an unknown state. I think there's a different word for it, but those are the three states that you can kind of be in. And then it gets a little more hazy because how you declare and what the compiler knows you to be may not line up. Different tangent. But for WPF, these are effectively all in the unknown state. So my small preference is to at least declare on value converters the return type, the value, and the parameter is null, is because these are very easy to get nulls coming through on. I generally don't declare the type or the culture info as nullable because there's, as far as I'm aware, no known cases where WPF will pass a null for these. Now, you obviously could instantiate one of these converters and send a null through. That's a thing you could do. Like if you were unit testing one of these converters and not using it as part of the XAML, that's totally a thing. But this is usually the way I prefer to handle it. So rather than the null bang there, because if null is possible, you should probably declare it. That's one of the things I've noticed is a lot of people get hung up on nullable reference types and wanting to declare everything as not nullable because they don't want to have to check for null everywhere. But the reality is if the thing can be null, declare it nullable. Like it's not a bad thing to declare something nullable. Yes, it means you're going to have to appropriately null check on wherever you're consuming it. So what? You should have been, if a null is possible coming through it, you should be null checking it anyway. By declaring it appropriately, you've declared your intent, and now the compiler can help you. Versus telling the compiler, shut up, I know better than you. Sorry, moment. Sorry. Need to check this. I have a friend's kid is in the hospital, so we're getting status updates. Cool. Sounds like he's doing better. Excellent. That is what we like to hear. Okay, so that converter's kind of clever. Like the converter, that's rather slick. Okay, but I think for these, it almost might be better for the template to not be this. And I think if we go back here, close you, Snoop. If we change this to stack of buttons, this is more in line with what I would expect. I'm a little torn because I know the this behavior of the foreground has bitten people in the past. And maybe it's worth considering on the style for like ignoring the foreground property. It's one of those hard things to do, right? Like, should you ignore what the foreground is? Like normally what I would be telling people to do here is do something like text element dot foreground, and then elevate this guy to here. Though I would also probably say that this should be a dynamic resource, because this can change at runtime. It's less of a problem here because this isn't a data template. This is going to be recreated, and at least in the demo app, it's not really possible to change your theme mid with the pop-up still open, so it's not likely to show up as an issue. But in general, brushes dynamic. Looking at you, Telerik. Oh my word, I had so many issues this week with weird things. For reference, side tangent. If in an instance constructor you call a static method that mutates static state, knock it off. That is completely unexpected. Don't do that. Constructors should not mutate static state, or I should say, should rarely ever mutate static state. That's not a thing they should do. Now, maybe if the static state is like an instance counter or something, sure, maybe that's acceptable, right? In your theming and changing your brushes? No. Okay, soapbox removed. Yeah, I do wonder if the solution is for this one, when you go to the floating action pop-up, it almost might be nice to, given this style, take away the option of this content and just force it into the stack of buttons. I do also like how it doesn't reposition during scroll. That's fun. I don't think that's a new bug. I think that's existed for a while, but it's a fun one. Okay, so I'll do that. Also, huge points. I love it. Anybody who's watched my stream for too long knows that fuchsia is clearly the color of to-do. I joke with one of the designers I work with in my day job that I will use fuchsia because I know it's ugly enough that they will not let it go to production without changing it. It's like, give me a design or I make it fuchsia. That is the threat. And it's only mildly a threat because I will totally do it. So absolutely love the fuchsia. Clearly the best choice. Ship it. Yeah, but I do, yeah, I kind of think that the fundamental problem is this template with a style where it's not intended to be used. That's my thought. So, is it expected? Kinda. And that's how you debug it. Okay, so we need to go back to here and here. With this, with the nope, that is not what I wanted on my clipboard. Let's try that again. Boom. Expected. It is sort of a hard case because we apply the same foreground background to both the button and the pop-up. Sorry, Nikolai, I realize this isn't a long, great explanation, but I'm also aware that you're probably watching this stream at some point, so I'm cheating. Okay. I'm also going to push my changes so that you have them as well. The margin applied to the stack panel is there to ensure there is enough room for the drop shadows, the button in the stack panel. Oh, interesting. Let's look at that. Stack of buttons. Okay, so if I set this to 24, is that actually applying the same? Those buttons are so tiny, it's kind of hard for me to tell. Doesn't look like a 24. Here's the other check. Set it to 0. I don't think the... that has a drop shadow. I don't think... And this is probably an artifact of when the... Oh, I bet you... Hold on. If I go here, stack of buttons... Hang on, I should restart the app because this seems like it's gotten itself in a not right state. Let's clean this up. Just restart real quick. Hot reload is great right up until it is not hot and not reloading. Okay. Pop-up box. Bum. I would be interested in, so like I'm gonna leave, this page is gonna make it into the demo app and ship. I'm curious what people think, if they prefer pages like this where you can play around with just a single control and its relevant properties, or whether you prefer something more like this where you get them rather than having to change all the properties to see the options, you can kind of just see them all laid out in front of you. Like there's pros and cons to each, and I'm wondering if it's worth maybe, like, I'm wondering if this pop-up page should be, if there should be a selector near the top that's like, pick my control, and then pick my styles and properties to see it. Too much pain with too hot reload. It's so nice when it works, but the keyword is when. Yes, when is correct. This is something else that I would love to put into like a more full, WPF template when I put it in, is having built-in stuff for doing things like styling, right? All right, this is the other fun part. Right to left, left to right. Yeah, how to confuse people real quick. Okay, so I want to change you to action pop-up. I want to change you to stack of buttons, and I want to set your elevation to 0, and I want to see. I now no longer understand this comment. The margin applied, because this is in the button stack, is there to ensure there's enough room for the drop shadow of the buttons in the stack panel. For the default style pop-up, this is not likely an issue, which it contains a card, blah, blah, blah. And it's simply provided the content is shown, so in cases like these... So this makes sense that the buttons need to have some space so that their drop shadow shows. But again, it goes back to the idea of these buttons don't have a drop shadow applied to them. They're getting the defaults based upon being a button. And actually, more importantly, the defaults these buttons are getting, because you'll note these don't have a style set to them. The styles on these are actually coming from, let's see, it is inside of here. Where is it? One of these things has a specific set of resources for buttons. Where is it? There is a specific button setup in here. There's tooltip. Here it is. Yeah. So buttons inside, or this is toggle button. Where is button? Which I can just hunt target type button in here and find it. Yeah. So this guy here is just straight up setting target type of button on here. Is this inside the right one? That's pop-up box. Where is it? One of these things in here, which is how they're getting that rounded state, is they are intentionally... Oh, this is inside of the pop-up box. This guy might be the one doing it. But this is inside of the card, which is inside the pop-up, which seems to be the wrong place. Somewhere in there, there is a style that intentionally changes it. I mean, I will give a thumbs up, but I think there's an outstanding question of whether that elevation should be applied to both. We've kind of already looked at these. This is great. Bunch of pre-canned values so you can play with it. Great, great, great. The other thing that I wonder is these are showing the property names as they exist. It's probably better. I was wondering if there should be spaces or not, but it's like, These line up more accurately with what the content's going to be. So we're gonna good pop-up box. There's our converters. We're gonna push those changes here in a minute. Does Material Design XAML work on .NET malware? It does not at present. There's been a lot of requests to port it to various other platforms. Initially it was Xamarin Forms that people had asked for, and I had pushed back on porting it to Xamarin Forms because Xamarin Forms had their material style, or not, what was it? Material element. They had a way of setting the theme to material design being Google's theming, which was good-ish, right? It got people most of the way there. It got crazy with funky controls and whatnot. I don't think Maui would be my first target. I do suspect in the next year or two we're probably going to need to start working on ports to other platforms, but the top runners are going to either be WinUI or Avalonia. Those, I think, are the top runners that I would consider going to next. Only because they kind of overlap a little bit better. The other thing is with Maui, I somewhat expect I would end up in competition with Microsoft, and they've got a lot more resources to throw at the problem than I do. So this library really has done so well because it fills a need that there isn't a good solution, right? WPF, if you want material design theming, there's only a handful of solutions out there. I know some of the paid libraries have a material design theme that's an option. But as for open source, I don't think you can find a better material design theme for WPF than this library. In fact, it's hard pressed to find really good WPF theming libraries, and I'm biased, but I'd say this is one of the good ones, right? MaApps is obviously another one. Any of like the Control-ZX related libraries, like the Ribbon one, are pretty good. Especially for free open source stuff. Like those I would say are the what I would argue are the top runners. Okay. I think I played around enough with this to agree that the math in there is correct, or at least close enough to correct that I'm not going to see it. Okay, so one thing that seems odd is the elevation property is applied inconsistently. Let's see, inconsistently to either the toggle button or the pop-up content, depending on the style selected. Couple options. Let's see. One, we have two properties. One for the toggle button and one for the pop-up. And I almost wonder if that's the option that's better. Two, we adjust the samples so that and I can kind of see a third option that's a little weird, where you apply the elevation property at the pop-up box and you let that flow down, but then let people override it in one of the templates for either the pop-up content or the toggle button, because those are technically things. So it's like oh, and thank you, Justin Bieber, for the kind words. I can't take full credit for this. Like, honestly, like this year, Nikolai is I think he's going for MVP, and he's pretty much killing it at the moment. He's got more PRs into this than I do. So, yeah. Okay. Next item. I wanted to get to the 5.0 stuff. We'll see. Yeah, you're much better than I at marking files as views. I seem to go through all files, then realize I forget to mark them. I have gotten in the habit of marking files as viewed when I go through PRs. It's unless I think that I'm going to mark the PR as approved and merged right away. It's just, if there's more than like 2 or 3 files, I immediately start doing this. Oh, I need to push my changes. Let's look at these real quick. Small cleanup done during review on stream. Boom. Commit. Push. Nikolai almost always leaves his stuff open for me to push back to, which is great. Here we go. Okay. Boom. And then when it refreshes, whoop, we then see the changes come in. And I think I'm going to leave those unviewed because there's probably some back and forth that needs to happen there. But yeah, definitely anybody doing code reviews, use the checkboxes. Every code review tool worth its salt has that or the equivalent. Okay, so this was the one that came up in the feedback. So this is here. So the question here is, what should the hints do? Right? Should hint be considered part of the content or not? I didn't change the style in the example above much. The problem persists if I use the standard. So very convenient. And points awarded to, oh boy, I'm not going to try the name, to the reporter. Oftentimes I get bugs like this and people forget to include what they've done in their app. This is helpful. This is really helpful to know exactly what he's set up, right? So he's got some text boxes. Here's the base style that he's on. He has applied some margin, some font weight, some font size, which you can kind of guess at looking at that. It's like, okay, great. And then updated the font size for the validation. So I'm guessing on some of these text boxes, he's probably got binding validation or similar turned on. Great. Great, great, great. The problem looks a bit like these issues. But these are closed. So let's take a quick gander at these. Yeah, this is slightly different because this is specifically around the floating state of the hint. And you'll note this one here, the hints aren't floating. I guess that one's floating. But these ones down here are not. Let's see, floating hint of text box. See, this once again it's floating and being cropped. Because the question becomes, is a limited your layout? So Nikolai asked for the XAML. Are in a reactive UI user control. But I have this issue with all my programs. Share a common file that's also included below. Excellent. Excellent. This line right here. Love that line. Love it, love it, love it. Okay. So this is going in there. So not bringing in the whole of the library, just bringing in the text box style. Perfect. That's fine. which sometimes people forget that you can do this. You don't have to take the library wholesale. If you don't include the defaults resource dictionary, you're on your own to then bring in the resource dictionaries you do care about, but you can piecemeal them. Like one of the projects I work on during my day job, this is exactly what we do, is we piecemeal in the library and just bring in the bits we care about. Like maybe we don't want to style the whole app. Maybe we only want to style parts of it. Okay, great. Import what makes sense. Let's see, data template, So these I assume are the text boxes. There's the text. Let's see, lab assistant, physician assistants. Oh, so this looks like something that's medically related. That's terrifying. That is utterly terrifying. Okay. Shared XAML file. Oh, there we go. Oh, okay. So also using my apps, bringing in the bundled theme, doing the needful. Got a bunch of extra stuff brought in for some of the, for icons and whatnot. Great, great, great. This grid here. So the hint gives information. Let's see, I don't think technical query isn't being rendered in a canvas. Yeah, so there is a good point being made here that doesn't make sense. So the other thing that gets weird is when you do a floating hint, should that count for the control size? So, because in WPF, controls, there's two sizes that matter. There's the layout size and the rendered size. So the layout size is how much space the control should be given in the layout, which is kind of what's at play here. Is the layout size is being shrunk and brought in. The hint gets interesting because, especially with like a floating hint, should that count towards the layout? Because in order, and then at what point should it count towards the layout? Because there's the animation. This is where things get weird, real weird, right? Of what is it? Fields. Yeah, let's go here. So this is a perfect example, right? Is this floating hint, right? And if we grab this guy, should the text box size, should this count towards its size, right? Because this guy here is being governed, I think he's inside of a grid with a fixed width or with a column fixed width. But the comment here is also around localization, because localization and fixed sizes do not work. Visual Studio team, localization and fixed sizes do not work, right? So for example, let's just hypothetically, right? See this? See this? See this garbage? Fixed sizes don't work. Anyway, I have a running, so for those who don't notice, I tend to bump the environment font size of my Visual Studio up. I do a lot of like screen sharing presentations, and I find that it's just easier if I bump my entire font size up. I've kind of just gotten used to coding that way. No, my eyes aren't that bad, but like, if my font seems huge, it's because I tend to run them at a larger size for presentations and then either forget to change them back or I'm just too lazy to change them back. Both are possible. But, so this poster makes some very good points that, especially with localized content, sizing of it it gets to be really weird. But I don't know whether... So I'm kind of inclined to think that the hint belongs to the rendered size, not the layout size. Meaning this hint can float above where it's rendered. But that does seem to be... I get the problem with localization, because the moment you say it's a fixed size, man, that is a tough one. I think I need to think on that for a minute. Let's see. Question. There are libraries that add observable concurrent stack, concurrent collection, concurrent key use, and use lock monitor inside themselves. Should they use them, or should I fix monitors to semaphore slim? So great question, without an easy answer. So I think... Oh, shut up. Let's see. Concurrent... Right, so these ones here, right? So concurrent stack, object. Thank you. Right? So these guys here. So in general, if these classes work for you, and are what you want, you should probably use them. Because in a lot of cases, these things will do their absolute best to avoid needing to lock. So their locks are actually somewhat expensive, because when you do the lock keyword, right? Just move it up, right? That lock keyword is kind of roughly equivalent to doing something with like the monitor class, because there's like monitor, try enter, you know, stack, all of this jazz. Yeah, and then there's this, but then you have to deal with the try enter, returning true and false. Like it gets complex. And so a lot of those ones will avoid locks as much as possible, which will make them by far more performant. They aren't perfect in all situations, and sometimes you need that lock to exist in a larger scope. And so sometimes it's actually more efficient to not use them, use like a regular stack or list or whatever, and lock outside if you need more concurrency synchronization that's bigger. But there's not a hard and fast one. Collections need observable events. So there is, so specifically around observable events. So if you have an observable collection, like this. So typically the thing that bites people with observable collections is you can't mutate them on a background thread, which, like, for example, away task, you know, yield or similar, right? Like, this is a great easy way to go ahead and shoot yourself in the foot, something like this. There is a dirty trick that you can do. So this is specific to observable collection, but binding operations. So you can do enable collection synchronization. I should say it's specific there. Right. So you can't, so rather than doing the locking yourself, if what you're building is some sort of MVVME style application and you've got like observable collection, this binding operations will go through and it will handle effectively doing what you kind of want to do already, right? Locking on the collection so that you can mutate it from background threads. Or before the binding goes to read items off of it, the binding will then make sure to acquire a lock on this object before it actually, you know, iterates and that kind of thing. So it dodges all of the... It allows the thing to be mutated from any thread, knowing that the bindings are now going to lock on it appropriately before acting on it. Now, with that said, the obvious problem with just blindly doing this all over the place is it slows things down. Locks are slow. So, but a lot of times for my view models, I find that this is a pretty common setup. Because I end up needing that kind of thing a lot. So depending on what you're doing, Yeah, so if you're building an MVVM style application, this binding operations enable synchronization is probably the easiest way to go about doing it. The other ways that you end up doing it with like the concurrent stack and that kind of thing get yucky fast. Especially if what you want is something with events. I find that oftentimes if I'm using one of these other collection type situations, these are usually for the processing of the data, and this is for the display of the data. So oftentimes if I'm, doing computational stuff, I'll leverage like the concurrent stack or regular stack or whatever. And then at the very end, I'll deal with pushing things over. Duplicate objects appear in the regular observable collection because of asynchrony. Got it. That is very likely fixed with this then. Right? Though if you've got multiple threads that are doing something like, if collection contains, right? New object, right? And then stop it. Right? You could imagine doing something like this. The binding operations won't save you. This just verifies that every call to your collection is synchronized, not that there's any synchronization between the contains and the add. Because if you have multiple threads that are invoking a block like this, thread A and B could both check contains at the same time. They both say, yep, contains is false. Okay, we both add, and then you still get a dupe that comes in. So this is one of those situations where if you end up needing logic like this, where I would advocate for managing a lock outside of it or similar. This is by far the easiest option, right? Is if you've got some logic that really needs synchronized access, go ahead and use a lock. Like, yes, locks are slower, but the rule of thumb is make it work, make it right, make it fast. Once you get to step 2, make it right, put in the locks. Make it fast, you can look at techniques that involve avoiding locks. But at least for the collection stuff, this is much easier. I must suck at C#. Lethal Air, don't worry about it. There are so many APIs inside of .NET and the BCL. I don't know if in my entire career I've ever gone more than like a month or two without learning about some new awesome API. And the moment you think you've learned them all, new things are being added, so don't worry. There's always going to be stuff you don't know. Then a question. 2 objects come because of asynchronous. We do not know what order they came in and how to know which is last. Contains the last valid data. That is... So that one may come down to a little bit of domain knowledge stuff. What's an API? Let me look. So what you let's see. C# channels. I don't know what this one is. That one looks interesting. This is what I was looking for. This actually looks rather interesting. So here, drop the link. I've just discovered this repo, so no idea, but that looks interesting. So it sounds like what you may be running into. And so depending on what, and again, so your question, Justin Bieber, about which way to handle this, so much is going to depend on your exact application, but oftentimes it kind of sounds like what you are describing is some sort of producer-consumer model. And if that's the case, this channels API is actually really nice. Specifically about doing this. The idea being that if you've got something that's producing data, right, and you want to know which one came in last, one of the common patterns is effectively shoving things into a queue, right? That way there's some semblance of ordering. If you really do have two threads that are just arbitrarily producing data and you need to know which one's the latest, you kind of have to have the data drive that, because latest could be very arbitrary otherwise if you don't have any sort of reference point. Are you making a .NET MAUI app? Not currently. Currently powwowing in WPF. No, so the channels can be used for anything. They're kind of this arbitrary queue pattern. So I most recently used them. I was building a ASP.NET Core Web API project, and I get pounded with requests, right? They come firing in, and the requests all basically they're fire and forget from the caller side, but they basically cause the service to need to do some amount of work. And so what I ended up doing was throwing them into one of these channels to force the work through in order, because you can build up a channel and then spin one or more receivers. What is the... I think if you just search this guy. Ooh, Cornell. This one's probably very interesting. The idea of the consumer producer model works really well for dealing with kind of this multi-threaded situation where you're not really single threading it by pushing it back into this pattern, because you could have multiple producers and multiple consumers, but you're effectively ordering them so that there's some way of pushing them through. So in my case, I ended up pushing them through a channel so that I could have one or more consumers process those requests and deal with them one at a time, to give it some sort of ordering. So it doesn't. So you can use this regardless of whether things are on the internet. Even though it's called channels, the basic building blocks under the hood are all just in-memory constructs. So you can use this for anytime you have multiple producers and or consumers. Think of the other term I've heard people use is like fan out or fan in. And then the only other thing then comes is, you know, what do you do when things get full mode behavior? So there are some weird things to be aware of with building these things up, but they are highly performant. So check those out. That linked this GitHub repo looks interesting. Like I said, I haven't read it. Can't say for sure. Okay, going back to this question of should the hint on a text box scale its size, and when should it? I think I'm coming around to the idea that the hint should factor into the size. It's really odd though, right? Like, it's really hard to say. I'm also noticing this thing is no longer wrapping and is extend. I think we've got a bug in our demo app. This text box should not be that wide. Is there something down here that pushed it that wide? No. I think we've probably just messed up our grid. This text box should not be like 800 pixels wide. I think the hint should probably should probably be considered as part of the layout size. The part that I'm really hung up on, though, is the idea of floating hint, right? So, for example, comment here, this is an easy one to say that, oh, yes, of course, comment should be part of the layout size. Right? And the helper text is clearly part of the layout size. So, because we can see this green border that show me the XAML draws on it. It's clearly allocated space for it. And floating hint appears to have allocated space for it too. If we allocate space for the floating hint to go above the text box, I would say that it makes sense. Maybe I'll phrase this differently. If the layout size factors in the float for the hint, it makes perfect sense that the size of the text box should accommodate the hint when it's not floating. Such as this Wi-Fi one down here. It is really tough to say, though, because things like validation, don't we have a validation one? Yeah. Like validation, that's done in an that's at the adorner layer, so the validation can float over the top of things. Like it's either in the adorner layer or we've got a switch that lets you toggle it into a pop-up. But in either case, it's outside the tree that your text box would be laid out in. That I do see the point. I think yeah, because the two cases here, right, is if we let the hint and the helper text count towards the size, that means they could scale the size of the item bigger than anticipated, right? Because that's the two cases, right? If they don't count, the item can shrink smaller than anticipated, which is what this bug is reporting. But if they do count towards the layout size, then they could increase the size of the item beyond what is expected. What do they do in such cases on the web? That is a good question. I think Google has a playground, don't they? I thought they had a playground. Don't you have just like a web playground to examples? I just want to see. No, I don't want that. I just want to see it work. Start exploring material design 3. Fine, I'll go here. Do you have, let's see, what do they call it? Text fields. Let's see here. Takeaways, what's new? Implementations. Web, planned. Not helpful, guys. Not helpful. Those don't count. Those don't count. Those don't count. The ones with the borders don't count because those ones clearly, my opinion of the documentation, yes. See, to some degree, this has gotten to be less of a thing because they've added, they've kind of dropped the plain text box in favor of these other ones. And the border ones I don't consider counting because those don't really have the same situation. I'd love to see one without it so that I could compare and contrast. Let's see. Fields. Text field. Oh, yes. Okay, run. Okay, do you not show a handling errors? Okay, where's the hint bits? By default, it has a decoration that draws a divider below the text field. Great. Adding a label or icon. So if we go there, where is their control? Build. Amen. Okay, constant text. How does... Oh, okay, so that's great. Thank you. Text field there. Okay, so I really want to do something because I want to do the decoration, right? Similar to what they showed there. Hide. So they've done that. So what happens if we drop this? Run. Because I want to see it without the border. I don't like how their alignment works. And I am struggling to tell how the heck that thing is sizing, so we're gonna cheat. Flutter, thank you. Please don't be something stupid. Come on, let me in. Let me in. Just want... How do I want inside. Let's see. Oh, you're gonna make this hard on me, aren't you? You're gonna make this hard on me. Why must you make this hard on me? So it's being drawn on the shadow. So the short version, hard to say. Hard to say. Let's take a look at the Figma. Open in Figma. Hang on. I don't know if I have a... Sorry, stand by while I check authentication. Continue to file. I think I can just get away with my free account. Yeah, okay. Where is... Seriously? Components? That's what I want, and I want text fields. See, and this is where it's going to get really weird because we have a case that isn't really covered here, right? Because they've got a background in all of these cases. Though I will say, looking at these, and this might be the key thing here. At least, so I can't say horizontally, but at least vertically, enough space is allocated for both the floating hint as well as the text. Because this background size is the exact same whether there's text, whether the keyboard focus is in it or not. So vertically, space is allocated to the layout size. So it would make sense that horizontally it would do the same thing. I think I'm going to go with that. I think the answer is that we probably want to adjust the behavior so that both the hint and the help text both are allocated. And I think that might be more expected to people, of having it grow too large because of content they put in it versus shrink. Because I think it is easier for people to prevent an item from getting too big than an item from getting too small. I think. I mean, the solutions are usually the same in both cases. In this case, the user's using reactive, which is making the problem slightly more difficult, but it's yeah, there is a thing though about sizing to content, because fixed size is generally bad, but I usually still advocate for, rather than setting like width, set min width and max width. Right? And do let things resize appropriately. That's one thing I've contemplated building is, one of my colleagues made a comment to me a couple weeks ago that there weren't a lot of people will build plenty of theming libraries for WPF, but not a lot of people build layout controls. Like that's one of the advantages of like what Maui offers, or even Xamarin Forms, is they started building out various like layout panel controls, because both iOS and Android are very opinionated in how you do layout, and there's pros and cons to every approach, but they started building like their relative layout control, which is admittedly pain in the butt to use, but once you figure it out, it's kind of nice. And there's no equivalent in WPF. And I started wondering if it would be worth building something like that out. Or I've often wanted like a uniform grid wrap panel. That doesn't exist. Like you have to roll that yourself. And it would be kind of nice to have some of those layouty type controls that you could leverage. To some degree, that's what reactive UI is giving you, is that, but it's, what if they let you do both pop-up and adorner text? So I don't think so the default material design thing, I don't think considers pop-up case. What we would call an adorner for validation errors appear to also change. because we put the validation error at the bottom, and this is one of those cases where like material design lays out what they want, but they ignore all UI frameworks, and every UI framework is probably going to have something that's not covered here, which means you have to kind of follow the guidance's intent rather than the letter, because they just didn't cover it, right? We've got controls in WPF that they don't list here, and you can lock yourself into that, but nobody is okay if we tell people, hey, by the way, you can't use the toolbar because they didn't cover toolbars. So you kind of just got to wing it. And I think in the case for like validation of pop-ups, I'm very okay with those not affecting the text box's size. Because in order to get like the pop-up, you have to opt into that behavior anyway. I don't think there's any controls we have where it's on by default. And it's really only there for the cases where people are like, hey, I turned on my validation error and it's being, you know, either trimmed or it's sitting where I don't want it. It's like, well, yeah, it's because you're cropping it. Because the adorner can still get chopped, because we don't, as part of the library, we don't own the adorner layer. We can set adorner layers nested inside of a controls template, but most of the time you want your adorner layer higher up. Usually the controls that add an adorner layer are window, I believe user control. There's a handful of them that put their own adorner layers in. That so when you render an adorner from inside of like our text box template, it's going to go find the adorner layer for it, likely by walking up to its parent and finding one. And so we can set an adorner layer at a lower level, but that's sometimes not what you want. So yeah, I think I'm going to say this should, I think I'm going to disagree with you on this one, Nikolai, and say I think it should go, I think the hints should affect the layout size of the control. And I think that'll be slightly more expected for some people. Okay, one more thing I wanted to do. I want to get my 5.0 stuff brought forward and moving, because I want to start working on those. Okay, so pull up master. So the other thing I might do real quick is I might go disable that flaky test that's giving me crap. Because am I still on? No, put me back on master real quick. Oh, hush now, Visual Studio. I hear you. Shut up. Shut up. And what happens if the adorner error is very long? So it'll depend a little bit. It probably it probably gets clipped depending on your layout. Which is why we have the pop-up option, because once you move your error message into the pop-up, it's now outside your visual tree and can be as big as your screen resolution allows. Which some people like, some people don't. And it's one of those, it's an option. Turn it on if it makes sense. But again, with all of it, it's the library tries to not be overly prescriptive in telling you how you should do things, because there's always somebody who's going to have an edge case that I haven't considered. Every time I've tried to put in something that's like, you should do it this way, somebody smacks me upside the head and says, no, we can't do that because of X, Y, and Z. It's like, okay, great. Fine. I get it. It's hard. Okay. Visual Studio, what are you doing? I know I changed branches and you've lost your mind, but it doesn't take that long to prepare a solution. Don't save. If that dialogue on a different Visual Studio instance was slowing this down, I'm going to be really annoyed. Are you actually doing something? Are you actually doing something? Because you seem like you're just sitting there not doing anything. Die. Okay, let's try this again. Open solution. This is not a hard operation. Thinking. Okay, that's a little terrifying. I don't know which project you think you didn't load, because that kind of looks like all the projects loaded. Okay. Okay, so really what I'd like to do is, I think I'm going to just go disable the test for the moment, just so that we can get the stuff out the door. Because this is really annoying. Proc dump is not available on the path. Interesting. We might need to install that, but I don't think that's overly necessary. Okay. It's the password box one with the... Just want to get the... That one. You are the one I want to disable. Until, at least until such a time as I can figure out why XAML test does not want to play nice with this. Let's see, skip. Ignoring until I can figure out why this doesn't work on the GitHub Actions runner. Okay, so we're just going to do that for now. Create branch, disable. Sure, great. Boom, 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 boom. Move my big head so it's not in the way. Disabling flaky test. Boom, boom, boom. Drag, drop, push. Yeah, sure. I don't care which remote it goes to. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, this thing is... that's right. Still, if I pushed it to the other one, it would have been better, because then Get Cracked wouldn't have lost its mind. Click the button. Create pull request. Technically put it in the milestone, I guess. Enable auto merge, confirm auto merge. And away we go. Okay. That'll go there. That'll go there. Hopefully that deals with that problem. Because clearly it passes sometimes, because the PRs were able to merge. And then that one should go... Nikolai, you may end up needing to rebase this PR or merge the change in so that you have that. Okay, speaking of rebase, we are going to close the solution. We are going to open this, and we are going to rebase on master. I'd like to take 5.0, and I would like to, let's see, collapse you. I've got way too many local branches. Should clean some of these up. Okay, and we're just going to straight up rebase. Yeah. Boom. First conflict. Okay, so we probably want to blindly take master in almost every situation. There's like 11 conflicts. Let's just take master on everything. Yeah, I think we're going to take master on everything. Can you rebase? Okay. So I want to go back and look which one of these. So is within selected value should be dead. So I just want to go, because this is the one that was in conflict. So we're going to go make sure that's still cleaned up. And then we'll push this. Because I've been trying to keep the 5.0 branch. First time drinking a Mountain Dew. I've been trying to keep the 5.0 branch up to date so that it's not straggling too far behind. Okay, so rating bar, because this was largely just clearing out all of the obsolete bits. I'm gonna format some stuff, clean up some stuff. We probably have some issues here. Okay, so is within selected value. Let's just hunt this guy real quick. I assume he's dead and we've probably just accidentally whacked stuff. Yeah, so that's problematic. That is problematic. Yeah, because that little closing curly brace is going to be an issue. So I think what we may want to do is go back here. Cancel reword. Let's just look at this guy. Because I assume the issue came... let's see. So that change is expected. That's just expression body members. That's fine there. This is the actual deletion. That's the deletion. The invert property. This is where things get weird. Min property coherence value callback. I think this is where the conflicts occurred, and that's incorrect. This change here, so 364 is likely a merge conflict. So, nope, that's not where we wanted to be. Yeah, rating bar. Oh, I'm probably looking at the wrong rating bar. That one. 364. Nope. 364. So that curly brace is problematic. Okay, so that format's a little nicer. So that looks a little bit better. I'm guessing there is one more thing that is off because otherwise this would be problematic. So that callback is missing. I think that's what we saw is it looked like the merge conflict whacked something it shouldn't have. So let's do this. Create branch here. I'm gonna go here. So this is gonna be a good example of I want to clean up this commit so that it's correct. Because I've done a rebase, I've got merge conflicts, I know this is the one that I want to address. So I've backed up to the one that's problematic, and I'm going to end up amending this commit as we go. We're going to end up editing this commit, and then we're going to fix the branch up so that it looks right. So this will be a good lesson. So that change looks fine. Okay, so what else? So 364 we know is problematic. This deletion is almost certainly problematic. So 293. Max property coerce, min property. changed coerce. Okay, so let's go and look 293 or 277. G277. Okay, so this guy here, max property. I'm just trying to figure out why these things are so far separated from their actual things. Because this really should be up here, in my opinion. Should go there. Min property changed. Like, in general, I try to keep these things together. Like, I don't think these things should be separated from each other. And actually, we should probably do change then coerce so that they line up with the order that they are in the property metadata. Great. Move that up. Okay, let's do max real quick, too, because I saw that that one was wrong. Where did that go? Where is... I guess I saw the max value one. I can just jump to its things. Max property change callback. Yeah, you. Cut. We'll go up here. We'll put you... There's the callback, and then the coerce is out of there. Cut. Scroll up to the red. Paste. Okay, so there's that. There's that. So we're going to come in here. We're going to do this. We're going to take this. We're going to go view changes, stage, amend, amend previous commit. Okay, so this is the commit we're chasing. And we're going to just beat this into submission. And then we're going to put 5.0 back on top of it. We've got those. Okay, let's look at what the next error is that it's complaining about. Is read-only property. We've got 2 of these. This is a dupe. Just make sure there was nothing weird about it. Type, rating bar, metadata, default bool. No, those are dupe. Those just got moved around. That caused a problem. Okay, so this one here. Invalid member declaration. So we've got this weird thing going on with this for loop. So 318 level. So let's see what happened here. I believe we just want to take this and whack all of that. So we want the for each in its place instead of all that. That's what it previously was. Okay. This all needs to die here. So I don't think we want any of these changes. These are likely just conflicts. So 396, 396. Yeah, so this is just a conflict. We want to take this up and delete. Unindent. Okay, and then we've got this return curly brace double offset. Return curly brace double offset. This doesn't need to be here anymore. That goes away. Okay, that addition wasn't done. This convert back should replace. Yeah, I really want to just revert a lot of this. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to stage all, amend, amend, and then I'm going to create a revert commit. Because let me just scroll down through the rest of this, because I think these bottom changes, I don't want any of them. Yeah, I don't want any change below line 442. So we're gonna just drop all the changes. So we're gonna revert the commit, leave them pending. And so in this case, what we want to do is we only want to stage the stuff that we want to get rid of. So rating bar button is fine. And so we're going to come down here, and what we really want to do is Stage selected lines. Stage selected lines. Actually, can I just scroll all the way down? Stage selected lines. Okay, so we're going to end up throwing away all of that. So then we amend, and then discard above, discard. Now we look at the commit. That should leave us with something that looks like this. Okay. Now we come back over to Visual Studio, and we see, does this compile? So these two guys should be deleted. That goes away. That goes away. That was the actual change. What's the error down here? Too many closing braces. Okay. Compile. Let's make sure you actually build appropriately. As long as you build, I think we'll be in good shape. Then we'll go continue working on this. This is one of those areas with long-running branches. You end up with these types of problems and they get annoying. Okay, so we're going to stage amend that. Okay, build succeeded. Okay, perfect. Okay, so back to get cracking. So we've got ourselves in this situation, right? 5.0 is now, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 commits ahead of this one. And this one here has a problematic commit. So what we'd really like to do is take this one and rebase it. So if we go here, and we rebase 5.0 onto foo. Oh, hold on, abort commit. Let's see. So, but this commit here is bad. This is the one we want to get rid of. So we really only want to rebase 1, 2, 3, 4 commits, and we want these 4 commits to be rebased on top of foo. So we drag here, we go interactive rebase. And we know this is the commit we don't care about, so we're going to drop this commit and then rebase the others. There we go. Mwah. And now we once again have the nice linear history with each of the 5.0 changes in their own commit. Huzzah, huzzah, huzzah. Everyone's happy. There we go. Push, force push because reasons. I mean, it's a rebase, so we kind of have to force push. We can get rid of our foo branch that I just used as a little anchor point. And now I want to go grab my color thoughts one. And I kind of want to, so let's create branch backup. And then I want to take color thoughts because I really just want to go color thoughts reset to here. Close window. Visual Studio is holding files and causing cracking. Oh, wow. Cracking crashed. Bad cracking. Don't crash. I know I was changing files out from under you, but trust me, it's okay. It's okay. I promise. It'll be fine. Okay. Reset hard. Move my color thoughts there. And then come back down to my backup and cherry pick the commit. Yeah. And then take color thoughts and push it. And then that'll get that branch in sync of where I want it to be. Okay, because this is the one where we're doing the source generator stuff and away we go. So, okay, those are pushed. Those are caught up. I think that's in a better situation. That gives me the ability to go through and look at it. Perfect. Okay, I may call it there before I dive in too deep. I wanted to get into this, and I may go through and do this. I think I want to work on getting 5.0 stuff done and out the door, and then maybe contemplate looking at an alternate target. Like I said, WinUI it's the one I want to do, but Avalonia might be better. We'll see. I think it might be a little more popular. So I need to look into Avalonia again, because at one point when I first looked at it, it didn't have some of the drawing or animation capabilities that we needed. But the other thing is I could just lower my standards. But it's come a long way since the last time I looked at it, so it's not likely a problem. Okay, oh, sweet. And my disable flaky test merged, which means the pipeline passed with it disabled. So as much as I hate that, okay, real quick. Yeah. Boom. Push. Force push. And then color thoughts. Rebase. Yes. Skip. I probably could have done the interactive rebase and saved myself a lot of trouble. Why are you abort? Okay. So we're just gonna, I don't know why it's giving me so much crap. Go there. Cherry pick the last commit. Yes. Push. Force push. Don't think, just push. There we go. Now it's very much in sync. Okay, and I'm going to clear out some of these dead branches. So, but I do want to get the theming stuff in and better, because right now we are kind of in this awkward place where it's difficult to make certain changes. And there's a whole slew of bugs and feature requests of, hey, it'd be really great if I could configure insert color here. And I'd like to make that problem just die so that we have an easy way of doing it. Like adding a brush should be as simple as adding it to some source of truth and then using it in the template. It should be no harder than that, and everything should then just flow nicely, right? All the theming related bits should just be built for you. It should be source generated, and everything should work. That's what I want. So that's the direction we're going to go. Yeah, so I may end up doing that next week, just out of, rather than getting sucked into pull requests. As exciting as they are, sometimes they get in the way of me actually doing stuff I want to work on. Not that they're bad, it's just sometimes I want to go work on the fun stuff. So, with that, thank you everyone for coming in and hanging out. It was fun. For anybody who missed, I will just pop the little sample real quick. I don't have it. Hang on. I intentionally thought I left it open so that I could show off my failure later. So, for reference, this is in one of my projects. I'm sorry, I'm not proud of it. It's a bug. I'm gonna go fix it. But the brain teaser here is, here's the pipeline, or the GitHub Actions workflow if we want to be real specific. The bug in question is the unit tests are not actually running. So the question is why? I'll leave that sitting there for just a moment. I'll scroll it down, I promise. So there's that. And then proof is in the pudding. If we go and look at the last successful run, we can go and look. We can see when we run the test did nothing. No tests were executed. You can also see there's the build. The publish ended up working just fine. And the hint here is you see all of these restoring commands in the publish. So what is actually happening here is... Oh, dang it. Thank you, Benjamin. Missed it. Okay, sorry. Okay, backing up. Rewind. Ignore everything I just said. Switching back. So, brain teaser from today was the GitHub action on the left. Unit test not actually running. So, if anybody wants me to not do spoilers, pause now before I get to them. 3, 2, 1. So on the right, we can see that it ran or attempted to run .NET test, but it ended up doing 0 tests. We can see there was a .NET build command, and we can see a publish. And the hint here is with the publish and these restores, because in theory, a .NET restore shouldn't have been needed, because the build should have done a restore when it compiled it. So that's the first hint as far as what's going on. If we look at the build command, we can also see that there's not a lot of output here, not nearly as much as you would expect from a .NET build command. The answer is here is this -- version switch. is dash dash version ends up telling you the version that you are running of .NET and doesn't actually execute the build command in the least. So attempting to specify version this way, no worky. Do not do that. So the actual solution is to use, I don't have it open. Grab one. Let's see, I think we were using Gilder as the example. View code, GitHub, workflows, main. So the actual solution is to do something like this with a -p, which is for parameter. So this is the same as specifying something inside of your property group in your CS proj, and then passing the version through that way. There's more than one way inside of a CS proj to specify your version. There's things like version suffix as alternate properties as well. So depending on what you're doing, pick the one that matches. In this case, keeping it simple, just straight up hard coding version, and hard code based on the environment version, but away we go. And then that actually flows through, and then you'll see on the builds that it actually, you know, sets the version of the assembly, because that was the point of all of this. So obviously, don't do this. This is bad. Okay, there. Now I'm back. Okay. Brief recap. Go register for Microsoft Build Conference, aka.ms/build. It is one of my favorite conferences every year. It is what I will call Geek Christmas because it is cool and fun and exciting. Yeah, and then hopefully 5.0 code generation stuff forthcoming. Hope all of that was helpful. No problem, Justin Bieber. Always happy to have people around. So with that, happy coding. See everyone next time.